Hey everybody, this is the preface to the 2018 edition of Guy Debord by Anselm Jappe. The preface is from Anselm Jappe, not like a translator or something like that. Okay. Preface to the 2018 edition. In his preface to the fourth Italian edition of the Society of the Spectacle, published in 1979, Guy Debord wrote that while most books of social theory were doomed to be forgotten after a short television debate, he foresaw quite another fate for his own book. He was undeniably right. The Society of the Spectacle, originally published in 1967, has become a classic and is one of the few books of revolutionary theory from the 1960s still widely read today. After his death, Debord's status passed from that of an underground hero, known only to a small elite which felt itself to be a kind of conspiracy, to that of a key figure of intellectual life. At the same time, Debord retained a subversive cachet, quoted variously by radical social theorists and activists, artists, and anybody wishing to appear critical towards the media. On the other hand, after a 2009 French ministerial decree declared his archives a, quote, national treasure, end quote, thus preventing their sale to Yale University, who were also eager to acquire them, they were purchased by the French National Library. For officialdom to proclaim a French author a, quote, national treasure, end quote, so soon after his death is a rare accolade indeed. Some, nevertheless, considered this a, quote, betrayal, end quote, while others deemed it a just tribute to the importance of Debord's work. This kind of global fame has, of course, served as a cue for the production of a large number of writings and other works about Guy Debord in particular, or the Situationist International in general. Originally published in Italian in 1993 during Debord's lifetime and since translated into 6 languages, my book was the first monograph devoted to Debord rather than to the Situationists as a group. Following its publication, I was naturally most heartened to learn of Debord's own appreciation of it. The availability of more and more source material since 1993 to 94 has meant that those aspects that were either absent from or underrepresented in my book have been open to full exploration by others in dozens of books and hundreds of articles. This new material includes a single-volume edition of Collected Works, 2006, containing previously unpublished writings and annotations, 8 volumes of Debord's correspondence, DVD releases of his films and voice recordings, and the thousands of reading notes and other documents now in the French National Library collections. In addition, accounts of their own time with Debord have been provided by several of his associates and acquaintances in books and articles. Today, it is even possible for researchers to check police files on Debord. By normal standards, therefore, this book ought by rights to be looked upon now as a mere, quote, forerunner and largely outdated. If it is still read and now reprinted, this cannot be explained by the factual information it supplies, but solely by the way those facts are viewed. The book does not dwell at any length on the history of the Situationist International and has even less to say about Debord's personal life. It sought rather to determine Debord's place in the history of revolutionary thought and praxis, in particular reference to his ties with the past, the present, and also the future of Marxist or Marx-inspired ideas. I stress the importance of this focus for me in my afterword of 1999 to this English translation, but I make no claim to have dealt exhaustively with the issue. The fact is, however, that over the last 2 decades, hardly anyone has seen fit to pick up on and develop the kind of interpretation of Debord's work set out in these pages. As was already true in 1999, conventional readings of Debord have tended to concern themselves with Debord's artistic side, especially Debord's early promotion of psychogeography or détournement, along with his critique of the media, co-opted versions of which have given us, quote, guerrilla media, end quote, and fueled the digital media explosion. The emphasis of criticism in these spheres has thus been laid on media imagery rather than on the reality underpinning it. Some of the post-millennial studies of Debord's films, a flurry of interest in his archive sources, work methods, and above all, the relentless preoccupation with his private life, often with deplorable results from the standpoint of scholarship, have all served to reinforce such readings to the detriment of more thoroughgoing investigations of his importance for the history of ideas. It is true that Debord refused to be considered a, quote, theorist of revolution, end quote, preferring to be called a, quote, strategist, end quote, whereas the historical period where Debord's strategies could have a direct impact on reality is fast receding into the past. What remains topical are Debord's analyses of capitalist society as a society of spectacle's function as a historical stage of commodity fetishism, and of its place within the broader historical context of the relationship between hierarchical societies and the use of time. There is, of course, nothing startlingly new in my claim that not enough attention has been paid to this, but it is a terrible shame that so little headway has been made down a path which, over and above theoretical considerations, can lead to Debord's ideas retaining their subversive force rather than simply falling into the grasp of such magical rebranding as the one which has repackaged the situationist concept of the derive as a smartphone app. Quote, one might do worse, end quote, I wrote in my afterward, quote, then reiterate in a slightly updated form a sentiment first expressed in the Situationist Journal in 1967, quote, we want ideas to become dangerous once again. We cannot allow people to support us on the basis of wishy-washy fake eclecticism along with the Derridas, the Lyotards, the Rortys, and the Baudrillards, end quote. Debord, Debord, or as in the original French, the quote, Sartres, the Althusers, the Aragons, and the Godards, end quote. Today, 50 years on and 20 since, 20, no, hold on. Sorry. Today, 50 years on and 20 years since the critical reexamination undertaken in my book, any hope of containing the misrepresentation and hijacking of even the situationist legacy, which once seemed more resistant to such attacks than any other expression of revolutionary culture, is clearly a forlorn one. It is no longer a matter of defining this radical legacy against an army of recuperators, but of ensuring that in the midst of a torrent of nonsense, a discourse espousing a comparable radicalism may achieve currency. The Society of the Spectacle reflects a specific moment of post-war society and offered the critique which that time merited. But despite all the upheavals and changes that have occurred since the book's publication, Debord's analysis retains great relevance today. The book is comparable in significance to such seminal works as Adorno and Horkheimer's Dialectic of Enlightenment, published in 1947. My own assessment in the pages that follow nevertheless argued that Debord's revitalization of Marx's concepts suffered from an internal contradiction. My own assessment in the pages that followed nevertheless argued that Debord's revitalization of Marx's concepts suffered from an internal contradiction and upheld many assumptions of, quote, traditional Marxism, end quote, in its allocation of a central place to class structure and to the revolutionary role of the industrial proletariat. I also pointed up this failure to distinguish clearly between abstract and concrete labor, so far from the, quote, hagiographical, end quote, intent for which some commentators have approached me. I hope to have offered a basis for further discussions about a social critique and praxis wholly commensurate with the present day and age. No doubt other books, notably Vincent Kaufmann's, have come closer to the man Debord and to his underlying artistic nature. What interested me was his legacy. It has been said that Surrealism was the attempt to bring about a conceptual fusion of Arthur Rimbaud and Karl Marx, and quote, changing life, end quote, changing the world, end quote. We may say in turn that Debord sought to amalgamate Surrealism and Marx. Admittedly, my own treatment of the Surrealist dimension was relatively sparse, but I firmly believe that, not least for readers not even born during Debord's lifetime, my account of his Marxism will still have much to say. Anselm Jappe, October 2016. Thanks for listening.